And we're live.
Live.
You doing the intro or am I doing the intro?
Let's do the intro at the same time and see if we can finish each other's sentences.
All right. You ready?
3, 2, 1.
Welcome
Hey!
back.
All right.
You do it.
Hey!
What is
Welcome back to the Neutral Zone Scratch That Arrowhead Pulse Podcast. Did a little rebranding and new name, same old me, same dirty old takes from the boys. And yeah, so we are now the Arrowhead Pulse Podcast. Felt like it had more of a connection to the Chiefs fan base, to the Chiefs kingdom, right, Hosey?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I felt like it just had a deeper connection and, giving our salutes to Arrowhead, and we want to be the pulse of Chiefs Nation. We want to be the pulse of Chiefs Kingdom. So I think that was a good choice to rebrand and kind of switch over. So all the socials have changed over to Arrowhead Pulse. We'll throw those in the description below. But yeah, we're excited. We're back. It's been almost a year. We took kind of a break. Nick, he popped out another baby, and I think at the time,
Well, I didn't, but
yeah, and so Nick's got two little boys that he's looking over, and my wife is due here in a couple months, and we decided that we wanted to start the podcast back again.
yes, got to create our little roster, but we're back.
We're working on the football team.
That's right.
We'll get it there. But all right, you ready to dive in? Let's dive into some football.
Yes, and first, I think we'll be pulling out a poll. Just want to, check the temperature of the fans. All three of you that are watching. If you guys feel that we should kind of pivot from being a Chiefs podcast only to maybe doing more overall general sports takes. Austin and I, we like to talk about all kinds of sports, even the ones that we don't know about. So we'll be covering like the pickleball championships and
on ESPN, the Ocho.
The Ocho. What's hot in the cricket world.
Yeah.
No, but kind of just switching a little bit more. We can have maybe some more debates and takes on, the current sports, happenings and what's going on. Because we like to keep, an eye out on all kinds of sports. We're kind of sports fanatics in all of the senses. So, we'll be putting out a poll, maybe see, what does everybody think? Should we just stick to the Chiefs? Should we do, all general sports? Should we kind of try and do both? That's kind of going to be coming out on the socials. So keep an eye out for that. But for today, we'll be talking about the Chiefs, and let's talk about them,
man. So the last time we saw our Chiefs was last year's Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles, and we all kind of know the outcome of that horrendous performance. But there was some bright sides to it in a sense. But we do know, the Chiefs lost 40-22 to the Philadelphia Eagles. So, Nick, we watched it together, and, we both experienced it at the same time. But kind of give me your thoughts, because I'll tell you, mine were just, it was so hard to watch, and it was just so hard to be a fan in that moment, just because it was disappointing. The season was up and down, and there was a lot of flaws, but they continue to pull it out. They continue to find these ways to, squeak by in wins. And, you just thought like it was destined to finish the three-peat. It just felt like everything was falling in the right place at the right time. And it was just like it felt destined. And so it was very heartbreaking in that moment just to see that kind of performance. So, give me your thoughts. Like I said, I know we watched it together and we talked about it, but let the people know how you really felt when we were watching that Super Bowl.
Yeah, and truthfully, I mean, since the Super Bowl, and we talked a little bit after, and we've been talking here and there, but it's kind of been like, and it just sounds so dramatic. It is a little bit, but it's like it's been hard to talk about it. Like it's definitely was like the hardest loss as a fan, even more so than the Tampa Bay Super Bowl. In that one, it was like you could see Mahomes doing superhuman stuff, and there was just no offensive line to help him, and his guys weren't catching the ball. And this one, it was just kind of an all around mess a little bit. My feelings, I would echo what you said is disappointing. I felt honestly a little embarrassed. It was frustrating. And, it's one of those things where it's like, and I could take a loss, a hard fought loss, that, the Eagles just came out and we came out and we fought, blow for blow, and they end up winning by a close margin, a field goal or something like that. But, as we both know, as everybody likes to remind the Chiefs Kingdom, the final score doesn't tell the tale of really how bad we kind of got our butts whooped. And it's just disappointing. It was disappointing all around from the whole team. And, I am a diehard Patrick Mahomes fanatic. I still, right now, I will say, and before I say anything else, I'll say I still think he's the best quarterback in the NFL. I think any team in the NFL would give up, an arm and a leg at the opportunity to have Patrick Mahomes as their quarterback. That being said, I think that his superhuman abilities at times throughout the season and throughout his, career have sort of bailed him out. And we just found out that that's just not enough. I mean, and not only that, he's not always going to have the perfect game. And, he's got some work that, I'm sure he's going to be working in the off season to accomplish, and some haunting mistakes. I mean, some of those interceptions are, they're just not him. Normally he wouldn't make those kind of throws. It was, I think they were in desperation and trying to, make something out of nothing. And, it was hard for him. The offensive line was bad. There was no receivers. There was no clear target for the most part. The running game, we abandoned it, which I think that's a coaching thing. Defense did, it seemed like they did okay, but then at the same time, I'm sure it's demoralizing when your offense isn't putting up any points, and the defense just, is out there. And one thing I have to say is I have to give all the credit to the Eagles, and they were a spectacular team. I actually personally, love watching Jalen Hurts and Saquon, and even AJ Brown. Like, I'm a fan of theirs as part of the football game. And so for them to win, that was hard fought. Their defensive line destroyed our offensive line. So in the trenches, they won, and that was the deciding factor, I think. But yeah, no, like you said, it was like the three-peat. It's history. It's legendary. That's where you make your legacy. And as we've heard, all off season, and we might hear in the future, this just puts kind of a bad mark on, Patrick Mahomes' legacy and this Chiefs dynasty, unfortunately. But, I still think we can bounce back. I'm hopeful for our future. But, yeah, overall disappointing for sure.
Yeah, I remember the way I felt after the loss, and it was, it was probably by halftime when I felt it, but it felt like this run was just over. The dynasty, the winning, it felt over. And the Chiefs are going to try it this year, because of Travis Kelce coming back, and they brought some guys back that we'll get into. And they're always going to try to win a Super Bowl with Patrick Mahomes at the helm. But to me, it felt like this was like the reset. This offseason was kind of like the reset year. You went to 5 out of 7 Super Bowls, you won 3, you lost 2, and it was a good 7-year run. And now it's time to kind of rebuild, put, bandages on your wounds, heal up. And that's what it felt like to me after the game was like, I don't know when the next time the Chiefs will get back. Not that I don't think they can, but we were in history. Like we were witnessing history in real time. And that's why I think it hurt so bad, was because it was just in that moment, you just felt like it had to happen. And now that it didn't happen, and this could just be my feelings, my hurtness from the game. And I could be kind of blind to actually, what the Chiefs could do this coming season. But it just doesn't feel the same. Doesn't feel the same coming into the offseason. Doesn't feel the same after the Tampa Bay loss, or even after losing to the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. Like it doesn't feel the same. It feels kind of like that fire has burnt out. And that's usually when those teams rebuild. Brady went 10 years without winning a Super Bowl in between his. So it's like they played so much football over the last 7 years. It felt they were just kind of burnt out at the end, and there was nothing they could do. And like you said, hats off to the Eagles. They played such an incredible game. I'm happy for Saquon, and I really liked the way that they built their team. The way they built their team was through the draft. They were aggressive. They took guys that a lot of people would not take, or they were bigger names. They like Jalen Carter, who fell. They traded up to get him. Some of those other guys from Georgia, Cooper DeJean. So they built their team the right way, and they gave Saquon what he deserved. Jalen Hurts, he played very well. And it was just a bad performance by the Chiefs, but give credit to Philadelphia because they deserve it. So let's transition from the Super Bowl. We're kind of, past that now. Let's get into some offseason stuff, actually some things that have happened, and then we'll kind of get into the draft after that as well. So let's talk about some of like the free agency departures that we've had from the Chiefs. We'll get into the departures, and then we'll jump into who the Chiefs have brought in. And so there's a few guys on the list that really stuck out to me just because of how important they've been over the last few seasons. That's Justin Reed, who signed a 3-year deal with the Saints. McCall Hardman, who not necessarily that he was this big deal or anything like that, but he was a guy that you could count on when the time came, especially in that 49ers Super Bowl. He left. Derek Nottie was the other one, who had been with the Chiefs his entire career, and he was such a good kind of second D tackle behind Chris Jones. He was very reliable. Those were some of kind of the big departures that I saw that felt like they could hurt. D-Hop, he's gone, but he kind of was kind of up and down throughout the season. Justin Watson's probably another one that maybe sticks out, but again, he was a good target for Mahomes, but he wasn't a game changer or anything like that. Wharton actually is another one now that I'm seeing. He was actually a really big loss, and shout out to him because he was I believe either undrafted or like a very late draft pick, and he turned his career into just getting a 3-year, $54 million deal. So I'm very happy for him because he probably didn't see this coming in his career, going from, undrafted or very late to becoming a starter, on a different team. So what were some of the free agents that you saw that kind of, the free agent departures that kind of stuck out to you?
Yeah. I agree with everything you said. It's like, Justin Watson is one that he was kind of a safety blanket at times for Mahomes. He just seemed to have that connection, especially on the deep ball, as we've seen, since Tyreek Hill's departure a few years ago. We haven't had that same deep threat attack. And Justin Watson was kind of one of the few guys that every once in a while would make a big play. So, kind of a interesting loss there where, we'll see what happens. Not to say that I don't think you can find or that you can't find another guy like Justin Watson out there, whether it be late in the draft or, someone who's just fighting for a roster spot and just kind of, can come up and we can find somebody to plug that hole that he left. And yeah, definitely McCole Hardman. It's kind of one of those he's just been part of this dynasty for a while. But at the same time, he left for New York and we were still doing okay in a sense. It was kind of like we brought him back as a veteran presence, someone who knows the system. But other than sentimental reasons, I don't think that we're hurting for him necessarily. And then Hopkins, is kind of like, I thought he was coming on and he was going to be a great pickup for us. And then it seemed like as the season went on after we signed him, he sort of disappeared more and more. And I know he was getting some double teams here and there because teams were catching on to that. But I was kind of like hopeful that he'd have a greater impact, especially into the postseason. And he sort of disappeared. So then it's like, you miss that because he definitely has some of the best hands in, recent NFL history. But at the same time, I think, maybe his age is showing, doesn't have that same, sort of explosiveness and wow factor that he once had. So, someone that you can probably replace again. And then like losing Pirine, he made some big plays, out of the backfield. But, again, at the same time, like I felt like our running back room was really deep this year. And, that's something else where you can get a late round guy or obviously we picked up Elijah Mitchell in the offseason. So, that's sort of that third down pass catching back, sort of safety valve running back that you can kind of pick up here and there. So, we can appreciate his contributions to the team, but I think definitely replaceable. But, I think top of the list, to your point, Justin Reed just kind of been, a big presence ever since we lost Tyrann Mathieu. And he kind of filled that hole almost seamlessly. In some ways, I could maybe say better. And also it was really cool that he was like kicking the ball sometimes.
Yeah.
So that's just kind of a really cool thing. But I will say, and I think I've talked to you about this numerous times, I'm a really big Jaden Hicks fan. And I think that he started coming on this season, very, very nicely. And I just really think he's going to make another big jump now that he gets a little more, spotlight to shine. And then Brian Cook, he was doing great too before his injury. So, I think we got, some okay outlook or we're doing all right as far as those being the key departures, considering also some of the guys we brought back, which I'll let you kind of go over that.
Yeah, I want to touch just real quick before we move on to about Justin Reed, and shout out to him. He was beloved in Chiefs Kingdom, and ever since Tyrann Mathieu came, and we needed that leader after he departed, and like you said, Justin Reed just filled right in, and he was solid all around. There'd be times he'd get burnt or he would just get beat, and that happens. But overall, he was like a very solid player that was somewhat a second leader on that defense behind Chris Jones and even Nick Bolton. They all meshed very well. And so shout out to him. And again, I want to just echo off of Jaden Hicks. Jaden Hicks, I'm very excited for. He was a ball hawk last year and wasn't even playing like that. He had 3 interceptions. He's a hard hitting safety. And some of the guys that, we're going to talk about later, Mike Edwards we're bringing back, who was on that Super Bowl team a few years ago. With that veteran presence, I think Brian Cook and Jaden Hicks are going to pick up a lot from Mike Edwards. And I think they learned a lot from Justin Reed too. So shout out to Justin Reed. And it's funny that he went to New Orleans. So him and Tyrann Mathieu that's a kind of a nasty safety duo, I'm not going to lie. And it does seem like every Chief goes to the Saints. I don't know if you've noticed that, but
Yeah.
It feels like a lot of Chiefs.
Willie Gay,
Uh, Kalen
Kellen
Saunders,
Saunders. Yeah.
Sorensen. Yeah, a lot of those guys end up down in New Orleans. So it must be some good food down there or something that brings them down.
Just copy my homework, but just change it a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I feel like that's what Justin Reed's doing for his career.
Yeah.
Behind Tyrann Mathieu. All right, well, let's dive into some of these guys that we're actually bringing in this year. The list is not, this big list of names that are like these huge stars. They're really just a lot of fill in the gap kind of guys. And an interesting one, the first one I'd like to talk about, and we can kind of hit a couple of these, is Jaylon Moore or Jaylon Moore, however you pronounce it. He was the left tackle that came for the 49ers. And we know we signed him to a 2-year, $15 million deal, which isn't like the crazy top of the market left tackle. It's almost like a plug and play and hope he works out kind of deal. He was sitting behind one of the greatest left tackles in NFL history, Trent Williams. So there is some validity to that he, got to learn from him. And he did get to play. He played, I think, a handful of games each season that he's been in the league so far, just with Williams' injury or, maybe they were winning and he got to get in. So it's not like he's just a green, never played, never taken any snaps. And he looked good as far as the clips that I've seen in the film, is that he looks like he could be a solid fit in kind of get the job done. I just don't think he's the future left tackle for the next 15 years that the Chiefs have been searching for like the last 5 years. It seems like they cannot find somebody that will really just step in. We thought it was going to be Kingsley last year. We felt like if he got the chance, he was going to step in, and he disappointed. And then Wanya Morris stepped in, disappointed. And then we throw Thuney over, disappointed. It's kind of just like one of those, we keep running into the issue with left tackle. And so I don't know if this is a, full-on replacement or solution. It just kind of feels like a bandage until we can figure it out later down the road. Kick the can down the road, and we'll try to figure it out.
Yeah. And I think, going back to Joe Thuney, I feel like, he kind of got thrown into the shark-infested waters, literally playing, possibly you could argue the most important position on the offensive line. And he's a left guard, he's not necessarily used to that. And, I just think he was in over his head once we got, into the Super Bowl and stuff like that with, to no fault of his own necessarily. That's a big ask for somebody who is a Pro Bowl guard, right? He's a Pro Bowler, great guard, but you're asking him to play a totally different position. So for him to step in and do that, that was helpful. And, in a sense, that's kind of one of those losses we didn't necessarily talk about too much, but it is going to be felt in that guard position. But, agreed. And going back to that, it's like you're talking about the left tackle, that is the most important position when you're talking about, the blind side of a quarterback for, unless you're a left-handed quarterback, most of the quarterbacks in the league, that's their blind side. And you got to protect the quarterback, especially Mahomes, to give him time to make plays. He just needs a little time to improvise or to make that deep throw. He's got the talent, but, he definitely needs that time against some of those elite edge rushers. And so, to your point, it's not a big name signing. I think it's a little bit of like a reach and hope that it works out with Jaylon Moore. But, if it does, great. If not, we just got more depth. We're not necessarily in a worse position than we were last year. So, and we're hoping that, some of the guys that we had on our roster before maybe gain some experience. And you always hope that, they kind of learn from, having a rough season or whatever. So we'll see. But it's definitely one of those we're hoping for it because it is so important for the team and for Patrick Mahomes to have some time.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what they do, with we drafted Kingsley as a left tackle, and a lot of people thought, and I said it on this very show, that I thought he was going to be the tackle for the next 15 years. He was going to come in, and he disappointed a lot. So maybe during camp, do they go at it and have a battle during camp? Maybe. I do think there is some leaning towards moving Kingsley to guard, and I think that was kind of the reason for the departure of Joe Thuney, especially when Mike Galliendo, the guy that, when Thuney shifted over, Mike Galliendo stuck in at left guard. And, shout out to him. He did his part and, great job. But it's like anybody could kind of fill in that spot. And why not use a rookie contract who has good potential, get him some confidence and put him back on the line. So I think that's probably the way that they'll roll. Maybe there is a battle in camp, and maybe Kingsley wants to keep that pride of playing left tackle. So we'll see. Some of the other names I wanted to touch based on is Christian Fulton, the cornerback from the Chargers. He signed a smaller deal, 2-year, $15 million. I seen the couple of clips where he played against the Chiefs. He played pretty good. It was just a couple pass breakups, nothing crazy. He just seems kind of like a roster spot as well. Not that he won't play. He seems like a third cornerback, or maybe a slot cornerback that they slide in that gets either some playing time, or maybe a starter. But we know how Veach drafts corners. We know that he's very good with talent when it comes to that, and I expect that to be kind of addressed as well in the draft. When we get into that later. So that was another one, and then the Jerry Tillery. I think that was just another decent pickup, where he was a guy that I think used to be a first-round pick, kind of bounced around to a couple teams, I think the Vikings and the Chargers. And then, Veach loves trying to get those first-round picks back to, rejuvenate them. He always kind of used them as like test subjects almost, it feels like, where their career didn't pan out to their draft stock, and you kind of get them for, 50 cents on the dollar, it seems. And they still have kind of that talent. So that's what that kind of signing seems. And the other one was Gardner Minshew. It's the
Minshew mania, baby.
Kind of crazy, because it's like, Gardner was playing pretty good, and I thought he maybe was still a caliber starter in the league, but it's funny that we just brought Gardner Minshew in. But you do need a solid backup, a guy that's been bounced around the league, but he has experience. And there's always that time that, if Mahomes makes, a crazy play and needs to come out from an injury. We've seen that in the past with, Chad Henne and Carson Wentz for a few times. So I like the signing, and he's solid, but, I hope he never sees the field.
I think we've played it safe with our backups, kind of going veteran or very much game managers. And so I think it's kind of cool. Like, I liked him when, of course, when he was doing good and kind of slinging it out there. He's just kind of like gunslinger, reckless kind of, attitude. Obviously he's got like a huge like personality, like just a unique character, if you want to say that. So, in a certain sense, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of cool with that. That being said, I guess when Mahomes is, been injured or out, and we've had those game managers come in, they've all done fairly well, like Chad Henne and Matt Moore when we had him. So maybe this is not a good idea. I don't know. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I'm excited to, heck, if it's just even in preseason, just to see him doing something fun. Why not? I mean, let's just see what he's got and have fun with it. Definitely.
Oh yeah. And a couple other ones that I want to touch, bringing some of the guys back. Hollywood Brown, we were expecting that. We were kind of thinking that he would come back, just with being injured all season. And his last year's deal was kind of like a prove it year, gets hurt. So the Chiefs are kind of giving him again another prove it year deal. Bringing back Nick Bolton, which was to some people kind of controversial. Not that I don't think Nick Bolton is a great linebacker, but a lot of people thought maybe that money could have been put elsewhere when you can kind of replace linebackers. And he's getting pretty much the top of the market, I think, just right under Fred Warner. So that was kind of a big signing, bringing him back. And then the franchise tag going on Trey Smith. That was kind of the reason why I didn't think Nick Bolton would come back, was because I thought they would try to get something done with Trey Smith. And it seems like they're still going to try by putting the franchise tag on him. But those are kind of the big three that, I'm glad that we got to get those guys back in the building with their experience. And I'm excited to see Hollywood with the mix of Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice, and getting those three guys who haven't had a chance to be on the field at the same time a lot. But we've seen glimpses from each of them doing something amazing in different ways. So it'd be really nice to see the offense when we can get all three of those guys on the field, and they're all different. They do different things, and it seems like they complement each other's games so well. So those are kind of the other three big ones that I'm excited for, guys that, familiar faces that we got to bring back in the building.
Yeah. And, we're both Nick Bolton fans. I attended Mizzou when he was, on that team. So I've watched him in his college years, and, as he's been drafted to us, and, only time will tell if the contract is, overpaid or not or whatever. But I will say, I think he's, top three, maybe, and he's not three, I don't think, run stopping linebacker in the league for sure. Maybe he's got a little weakness in the pass defense, but I don't want another downhill linebacker other than Nick Bolton. So I'm very happy with bringing him back.
So before we move on from free agency, I do want to kind of touch base on the running back room. You brought up Elijah Mitchell kind of taking that Samaje Perine role, that third down back, or the Jerick McKinnon role, where it's kind of that safety blanket, dump it out on third down. And then you've got Kareem Hunt, who played tremendous last year, coming in during the middle of the season, led the team in rushing, led the team in touchdowns for rushing touchdowns. And then they, of course, Isaiah Pacheco, who was coming off an injury last year, came back somewhat okay, nothing. He didn't come back storming, back onto the field and took over the running back room. It was kind of like running back by committee once he got back from injury. And so I'm kind of, I feel bad for Pacheco in a sense. And what I'm getting to is, like, I feel bad for him because Isaiah Pacheco was a 7th round pick. He got the lowest of the low you could get for a contract when it came to rookies. And so I think it's right around like 800,000 or something like that. And he's played the last, 3 years. I think this is year 4, gone to Super Bowls, been productive, came in as a rookie, was productive, took over the running back room, and became almost a star, or at least some kind of level of star in the running back space. We know running backs have kind of diluted a little bit and aren't this huge value position anymore. But he became somewhat a star. He's a known name and became a star. And then the injury happens. And Kareem Hunt gets a chance to rejuvenate his career, gets a chance to make it right with the Chiefs with his situation. And it kind of just throws Pacheco in the back of, the back of the room, back of the running back room, just out of sight, out of mind kind of deal. And I feel bad for him because this is a prove-it year. And he has to perform out of this world to, I even think, get a chance to get the money that he really deserves. Coming from a 7th round pick to becoming one of the top running backs in the league, that is a crazy, feat. And there's a lot of guys in between who didn't make it, who, drafted before him. And so he hasn't got a chance to get that check. He hasn't got a chance to get that big payday that a lot of these guys play for. And I feel bad because I do think the Chiefs are not a team that are going to be just out here paying, like the Eagles who are paying Saquon Barkley, or the Ravens bringing in Derrick Henry. The Chiefs are not a team that I think are going to give out money to running backs. They just don't seem like that kind of franchise that hands out, unless it was that level of Saquon or Derrick Henry and it made sense. But I don't see Isaiah Pacheco giving that production and deserving a level of a contract that I think the Chiefs will give him to bring him back. I think they'll offer him a contract, but I think it'll be maybe not disrespectful, but a lot less than what he probably deserves, in a sense, with his life and where he comes from and how hard he's worked and what he thinks he deserves. But the Chiefs are not going to overpay on running back. It's too easy to go get some guy to bring in the same production. We saw it. Kareem Hunt was sitting on the couch, literally. He was not on a team. And with this offense, he was able to come in and produce a lot. And so I feel bad for Pacheco in that sense, just because the situation, it happened. It's football. It's a business. But I really wish that there's going to be an opportunity. And if he shows out, he balls out this year, and the Chiefs give him what he wants and get him what he deserves, and we can have him as a running back for the next 5 years. That is the dream scenario. I just don't see that happening for Pacheco, and I think this is kind of like a contract year where he's going to do everything he can to make sure he stays healthy and he can get a contract.
Yeah, and it's kind of just one of those things where it's hard. What can you say really, or what is there to do? Just because it's like that's just the way that the market is for running backs right now, and it's kind of like it's possibly the only position where if you perform well, you only increase your odds of getting hurt. In a way, you're going to get the ball more, right? And not only that, teams across the league have proven, and the Chiefs are, in this case, example A, that you don't need a superstar running back to make it into the postseason. The Eagles obviously were able to do that with Saquon, and he was a huge asset to them. But you just don't see, other than guys like Saquon or Derrick Henry, for the most part, like people paying out huge lump sums anymore for running backs because, again, Chiefs are example A. How many different running backs have we had, plug and play, whether they be, rookies when Pacheco came in, whether they be like kind of veterans that are not superstars, that are just, versatile, and just be able to be good enough, right? And especially in our offense, which we don't, run the ball a ton. So it's just kind of, it's maybe not fair, honestly, because it's like, they can play their tail off. A lot of people don't want to pay a running back because of the possibility of them getting injured. But if you do get paid, you're going to be expected to perform, and then that only increases your odds of probably getting injured. And they just take a lot of tough hits. I mean, that's like the running back is the workhorse of the offense, right? So, it's just, it does suck. I just don't know, what we could do differently about that, because it's just the way the market is right now. But to your point, I could see them keeping, as long as he, stays healthy this season, and maybe if he's got a great, bounce back year, maybe we do pay him, maybe not like, Saquon money or one of those guys, but, a nice chunk, and maybe he enjoys playing enough in Kansas City that he'll stay. So we'll, only time will tell, I guess. But I definitely agree. It's, sort of feel bad for him, kind of feel like it's not fair. But, when we're talking about football, it just is what it is. And, he knows that, they all know that. So it's just, next man up if it needs to be.
Yeah, I think a year from now, 10 months from now, whatever it is, we'll be congratulating Pacheco on chasing a bag. And I don't blame him whatsoever. Thank you for your service here in Kansas City, but I think it's going to suck because he's a fan favorite as well. He's a guy that really works hard. And, it's like every down is his last down, it seems like. And that's a guy you want, to play for your team, a guy that's going to put it out on the line every snap, every second, every rushing yard. He's trying his hardest. And that's why I would salute him if he did leave, because I think he deserves to go chase the bag for sure. All right. So I think I'm ready to talk the draft. I don't know about you. I've been thinking about the draft, and you sent me a mock draft earlier that really was like, that's the one that I want the most. So I don't know if you're ready to talk draft, but I'm ready to talk draft.
I want to hear what you got. I've got positions that I think we need to fill, but I'm not like super set on anybody. That I really want. Actually, there's one guy that I really want, but I'll let you hit me with some of your favorite prospects and kind of your mock or whatever you got, and let's break it down.
Yeah, so we know we get the Chiefs got pick 31 and pick 63. We have the pick 66 from the Titans, pick 95, and then pick 133, and then they've got a handful of seventh round picks as well. But those are the first 4 rounds. And some of the guys that are really sticking out to me and that I've been kind of seeing other mock drafts where some guys are slipping. There's two names. It is Luther Burden, your guy, Mizzou, and Josh Simmons, offensive tackle out of Ohio State. So those are two kind of candidates that I could see if they got to the 23, 22 range and they fell that far, I could see the Chiefs making a trade with having picked 63 and 66, back to back. I could see the Chiefs trying to package, 31, maybe 66 or 31 and 63 and moving up to 24 or something like that and trying to get one of these guys. They're, even though we just brought in and we talked about earlier, Jaylon Moore being that left tackle, Josh Simmons seems he's much bigger, bigger arms, longer arm length, and played at a huge college in Ohio State. But if he were to fall, I think the Chiefs make a huge splash and try to get their tackle for the future. And like you mentioned, Jaylon Moore kind of just be that fill in where we needed it, whether it be left guard or maybe something happens to one of the guys get injured, he can kind of fill in. Or if they don't do that, I really just want them to. I don't know if they'll actually do it, but the Luther Burden, I just think why not just
Man,
go back to back to back years, taking a hit receiver, having these young nucleus of talent all around, and being able to just have at one time, you're going to have one of these guys on the bench, which would be Xavier Worthy, Rasheed Rice, Hollywood Brown, or Luther Burden. That's how much talent you would have in your wide receiver room, and it would not be costing you anything, basically, pretty much nothing. So those, at least for pick 31, I think, of course, we know that trades happen and things could change, but that's where I would see if those guys either fell or they got close. Those are the two guys in round one. I would want to see the Chiefs make a splash. I know you've got some opinion on Luther Burden. That's that's one of your guys there at Mizzou. What's your opinion on him?
man, I can't see him falling to us. Maybe that's a bias because I think he's just that good that he wouldn't. If he does, I would be, you know, jumping up and down, screaming, "We got to take this guy," because he obviously had, the performance that he did. He's well known as one of the best wide receivers in college football coming out. And having watched a lot of Mizzou games, think that they drastically underutilized him. And I think that they didn't necessarily always utilize him to the best of his abilities. And despite that, he still made a splash, and still, was a standout player, an all SEC type of player. So I feel like in an offense with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid calling the plays and drawing stuff up for him, and other guys like Rasheed Rice and Xavier Worthy taking, the pressure, you can't double team and leave one of those other guys open. And so adding that other factor, as much as I like Hollywood Brown, and I think he had some moments that, he's still got some room to shine. I think, he's sort of on the back half of his career as a wide receiver, probably. And I think that getting someone, to your point, young and just keeping our receiver room fresh, would be a huge advantage for us. And I'd just be ecstatic. And then you get, not only that, of course, the connection of staying in Missouri and having a ton of fans that are going to love that, just, Chiefs fans that crossover is huge. So, I think if he's there, that would be fantastic. I think, you take best player available, even if you might have some other needs. In that case, you take best player available and go out and get him for sure.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And some of the, getting into like second round and stuff like that, there's some guys there too that intrigue me a little bit, but more positionally than anything, I think the Chiefs got to beef up on D tackle. And I think corner and wide receiver are the three that I would go after. Running back is kind of like the fourth option, kind of how we mentioned earlier. They're kind of replaceable. There is one guy that I do like that I think maybe in the third round or fourth, Devin Neal, Jayhawk. He seems to be he would be a best fit for the way that Mahomes, plays his game. He's a zone running back. He's a guy that you just dump on a screen. He can catch out of the backfield. Him and then Kobe Bryant. Shout out to Kobe Bryant. But yeah, the corner at a KU as well. Watching KU football, this guy is the definition of a ball hawk. He is the definition of a ball hawk, and he's a pretty locked down corner. And I think that if he could slip to the Chiefs at pick 133, that would be crazy, because I thought he was at least, a good second or third round pick, with his talent. He's a tall cornerback. And like I said, he was a great ball hawk, and, he was just good at being all around corner in general. But his size and his speed, I was fully expecting him to go way sooner than a lot of mocks that I've been seeing. If the Chiefs were able to get him, I mean, that'd be kind of like a dream to me, because we know Veach loves drafting corners late, with talent. And that would be right there. Like if we could get Luther Burden and Kobe Bryant in, and just like this young nucleus of guys that we can keep replenishing, that would be just that's how I would do it if I was a GM. And of course, I'm just a guy that does bad takes on podcasts. But that's what I would do, is I would kind of go after replacing these positions that are top dollar. And if you can get good talent at a reasonable pick and not make super reach, picks, those are some of the names: Josh Simmons, Devin Neal, Kobe Bryant, Luther Burden. Those guys that have talent, and I don't know if you necessarily have to make a push, for instance, like the Chiefs did last year with Xavier Worthy, where they had to, give up draft picks to get him. You may be able to get these guys to fall in your lap, and they have a ton of talent.
To get another anchor cornerback, on the other side with McDuffie, we've seen when Snead and McDuffie were duos, that was top three cornerback duos, and that was huge for us. I mean, and this year I definitely think that not having, a real solid number two corner kind of, it definitely showed. And, getting somebody of that caliber of talent, whether it be him or somebody else, I'm definitely all for, going, early-ish. I don't know what I mean by that is maybe not first, but second, third, somewhere in there, and getting a standout corner. I'm totally okay with that.
I have a hot take. Okay. Nobody clip this. I have a hot take. If the Chiefs draft more than two corners in this year's draft, McDuffie will be traded after this season. I don't see Veach. Again, we talked about overpaying guys with Pacheco. I do not see a scenario where McDuffie is an all-star. He's a superstar corner, got to be mentioned in the top 7 to top 5 in the league. I mean, he is a guy that came out of Washington and undersized, and a lot of people thought maybe the Chiefs reached when they drafted him as well. And he has been everything and more that they've done, that they've asked him to do. But Veach is not going to overpay a guy who, again, this was year 3, I believe, for McDuffie, and he didn't get his first interception until year 3. He's not a ball hawk. He's a good defender, but he's not a guy that gets you the ball back. And you don't want to overpay for a guy that you could just replace, especially when you're known to being able to draft talent at that position, where you've done it with Jerry Sneed, Jalen Watson, Joshua Williams, Trent McDuffie. You have prime examples in the last 5 seasons. You've been able to replace, and to me, McDuffie seems like a trade target after this season. Of course, if he stays healthy, has another incredible year. I could see where the Chiefs may not want to pay him because they will continue to replenish through the draft. And again, they brought in Christian Fulton. They're just going to bring in plug and play guys in some of these positions and replenish through the draft because of the contracts, because of having to pay Mahomes so much money. Kelsey coming back, having a big chunk. You're trying to replenish your offensive line, giving out money there. Bringing back Nick Bolton. A lot of money has gone around. Trent McDuffie seems like a candidate to be traded next offseason.
Yeah, I actually don't think that's a hot take at all. I think that, and then that last part right there is what I agree with most, is you only have so much money to throw around. I foresee them, the way that the Chiefs seem to be doing it, and I hope and I think it's kind of working, is we're not going to they don't want a rebuild year, I don't think. I mean, we'll kind of find out maybe in this next season or two, as some of like Kelsey and the other core guys maybe start aging out. But that's the whole thing, is I feel like, we kind of are replenishing as we go, take, sort of the squeeze the talent that we have out, get the prime of it. And, if they got some juice left when they trade them, it's higher trade value for us. And it also, to your point, kind of avoids overpaying somebody that, could free up cap space. You could get younger guys to fill that and things like that. And let's be honest, I think no matter what, the Chiefs are probably always going to prioritize getting Mahomes weapons and protection, right? Well, so we always have to have money or something to be able to help him out, because he's the star. He is the team, and that sounds crazy to say. I'm not saying that like the other guy. There's other huge aspects of the team, but the reason we've won Super Bowls is because of Patrick Mahomes in a huge part. Let me just say that it's not the full, but it's a huge part.
Well, the prime example of this hot take that I'm throwing out there is in this draft. We are getting a benefit from that example in this draft when the Chiefs traded L'Jarius Sneed. It was an option to pay him or Chris Jones. And to my surprise, I think if you remember when we talked about it, we were kind of almost on the L'Jarius Sneed side to pay. He was coming off like a superstar season. Like you mentioned that duo. I think he was snubbed of the All-Pro, but it was an All-Pro season. I mean, he deserved to be All-Pro. And they did exactly what we said here is they traded a guy who had, you mentioned the juice. He had a little bit of juice left, enough to get you a 3rd-round pick. You didn't have to pay him. And then see what he did this season for the Titans. Injuries and then off the field issues. And the Chiefs are going to be the ones that win that trade. And I'm not saying McDuffie's going to have the off the field issues, and he's much younger than Sneed, and he's got a lot of juice. He can still, perform. But the reason is there's a track record with the way the Chiefs operate at this position corner. They don't overpay. They use rookie contracts. And if you have value and they can get value out of you, you're going to be gone. And that's why I think it's going to be, if you see Veach, that the year that he drafted Joshua Williams, Jalen Watson, McDuffie, that was all in the same draft. He drafted 3 corners in one draft, 3 DBs. So if you see Veach do that again this year, he goes out and gets 2 or 3 DBs. I promise you, we will come back to this podcast. I will clip it myself. McDuffie will be gone. All right, now I don't know about the 7th round picks. I'm not too fond of, I don't know that deep of, my ball knowledge is not that deep to know who the Chiefs are going to take in the 7th round. So let's move on to doing our own little mock draft through the top 10 picks. I don't know how ready you would be, Nick, to do that, but I'm interested in at least looking, or maybe looking at some mock drafts that people have done and kind of analyzing them and see where we would fall or how we would see the situation play out. Of course, we know trades could happen and whatnot, but right now we would operate based on how the draft is today. We're filming this a week before the draft. So as of right now, Tennessee Titans still hold the number 1 pick. So do you want to go through and do, 1 through 10, or you want to do 1 through 5? What do you think?
Yeah, we could do like a quick fire, 1 through 10 if you want.
Let's just go one at a time. We'll go back and forth. You go 1, I'll go 1, and let's see what you think. So for me, Titans, I think it's all the reports after his pro day, everything. I think it's Cam Ward without a doubt.
Yeah, and I think that he's the best quarterback. Or at least, you might get a guy that randomly is like, oh, this guy, kind of defied all odds and is better. But I think that he's the best quarterback available. So I agree with you.
Absolutely. So Cleveland Browns, I think they go best player available. And a lot of people think it's going to be Travis Hunter. I don't think so. I think it's Abdul Carter. I think they find their replacement for Myles Garrett. That's going to be in the future. I think they pair them up on the edge and just try to dominate the pass rush. You saw what happened in the Super Bowl. When you have a pass rush, it's almost impossible to move the ball. I think they take best player available, and that'd be Abdul Carter.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that'll be kind of the sort of like the shock, potentially. And there's probably some mock drafts out there that have that, but that's the first thing I thought too is just having that pair of DNs. Again, look at what the Eagles were able to do against the Chiefs. Everybody's going to be copying that formula, right? What can you do to beat the best team in the league, or at least match, maybe technically the best team in the league now, which, by all accounts is the Eagles because they won the Super Bowl. So, and that's a strong, front 4 defensive line, right? And so I definitely agree with you 100%. I think they're going to pair those two and try and have like a nasty DN duo.
Yeah, it would be nasty if they do that. I could see them going quarterback. They do need one, but sometimes and I don't know, maybe this draft will show it. I don't know how much I believe in Shedeur. So going to the Giants. Now, this is a tricky one because I could see them taking Travis Hunter and, big name, big city, and being that kind of superstar. I have a feeling that they're going to go pass rush. I feel like they went with Russ at quarterback. I feel that Shedeur he's not going to want to go. He'll want to go to the big market, but he wants to start. I think, a team that's going to take Shedeur, maybe Russ is a bridge quarterback for them. I think they're actually going to go Mason Graham, the D tackle out of Michigan. I think that they go D-line because it's hard to play it safe with Shedeur, and I could see them taking Travis Hunter. I probably should pick that, but I the reason why is because I think I want him to go to this team, this next team that I'm going to talk about when we get down the draft list. But I think they go Mason Graham.
Yeah, this is I guess getting real boring for the viewers because I got the same thing. I'm looking at a mock draft right now, and it's a little different. Like they had Travis Hunter going to the Browns and Abdul Carter rather than going to the Browns going here. So I think they stick to that D line pickup. With Abdul Carter being gone, they go next best D line available, Mason Graham. I totally agree with you. So, I don't know. We just on the same connection,
On the same wavelength.
the same wavelength, man.
Okay,
And the next one, I know I'm going to agree with you.
I don't know. This is where I'm going back and forth now. So there's two options for me here. It's either Travis Hunter or Will Campbell. My gut tells me the Patriot way will be Will Campbell. Like they're just going to draft the offensive line. They're going to do the safe pick. They're not going to try to test anything like that. But I got a feeling that they're going to take Travis Hunter. If he falls to 4, I feel like he can't go past 4. And so I actually am going to say that the Patriots get Travis Hunter. I like that he could go to an organization that is at least somewhat stable, even though they have been struggling over the past few years. I don't want him to go to an organization that kind of waste his talent. And I think, just the front office over there, they did get rid of Gerard Mayo. But I do think that going to the Patriots would be the best fit and best situation for Travis Hunter. So I'm going to take Travis Hunter to the Patriots at 4.
I definitely see your take on that. Because it's like, back in the day, Belichick, and I think Mike Vrabel is definitely going to have his own version of going back to the Belichick formula, because obviously he, was under that system for so long and knows the success that can come out of that. I think that, they always had a good offensive line. So that I wouldn't doubt that they go Will Campbell here. And also he's a Mike Vrabel's a defensive guy. I wouldn't doubt that he wants to see, what Travis Hunter could do. At the same time, they have no real receivers in New England right now.
Mm-hmm.
And let's not forget that a recent player that played on the defensive back and wide receiver was Julian Edelman, former New England Patriot. So there's already sort of a precedence of a Patriot player, playing both sides of the ball. And, I definitely think and could see Julian Edelman coming back and, giving Travis Hunter tips, even though they might be kind of different style players. But, he's a guy that has experience on both sides of the ball. And eventually Edelman, became more of a wide receiver and didn't play cornerback and or DB anymore. But, that's why I think that the Patriots go Travis Hunter. Also, letting him slip any farther, the potential there seems like you go ahead and grab that guy.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So Jacksonville sitting at 5. I do think this is where Will Campbell goes.
Yeah, I think that they got just way too many holes all around. And, you take best player available. If Will Campbell's available at that point, you got to have somebody to protect Trevor Lawrence if that's your quarterback going forward. And if not, even still, they seem like they have like a lot of missing pieces other than, they struck gold with like Brian Thomas at receiver last year. And they have a decent backfield, but again, so, a lineman is not a bad take here. So again, I agree with you.
So then I think this is maybe where, 6 through 10, this may be where our mocks go different. I think 1 through 5 is in some kind of order what we just labeled. That's probably the top 5 that go. Maybe Will Campbell falls out. But this is where I think it kind of changes. I bet we have different points of view and opinions. So next up is Las Vegas Raiders. And I guarantee you everybody's going to want them to take Ashton Jeanty, and they're not going to. I think it's just in Raiders DNA, and this is not because this is a Chiefs podcast, but I think it's in Raiders DNA to take a bad pick. They're just not good at drafting in these top 10 picks. The history of the Raiders just proves that. This is not my, gut hate feeling for the Raiders coming out. So I do think they take the edge from Georgia, who is Jalen Walker. I don't know that much about him, but I don't think that they actually go with the big name Ashton Jeanty. I think they end up taking a D end, try to beef up that pass rush with Max Crosby and some of those other guys. But we all know it will be a terrible pick.
So to your point, potentially, I've got a different pick, but let me say I don't hate that pick in the mindset of the Raiders for them, because Max Crosby's got to be, sort of on his way out a little bit, and they're probably going to want to, replace that, and then at the same time, have that duo while you can, especially, they're going to want to get pressure on the Chiefs. Again, that's the teams are going to copy that formula, and really, especially when you're going for, the teams on top, they're going to go and try to put some pressure on Mahomes. And so I don't hate that for them in the sense that it's not a terrible pick. But, I think a controversial pick here, but I think it's going to happen, is I think that the Las Vegas Raiders, Showtime, Las Vegas Raiders, flashy, got new ownership with, or at least with Tom Brady, jumping in there. I think that they take Shedeur Sanders, a big marketable guy for their team. Totally fits in that like sort of Raiders style. I think that I'm fairly certain that, Coach Prime and Shedeur have a fairly good relationship with Tom Brady, if I'm not mistaken. And so I could really see them taking Shedeur here at 6, which some people might, the reason might be a bad pick, on paper or whatever, is that might be too high at what people have him rated. But, if it pans out for them, then they get their quarterback of the future, a guy that totally fits their style with the swag, that goes with that sort of Raiders way or whatever, So I think that they actually pick up Shedeur here.
That's honestly a crazy take. Not it could happen. I mean, it makes sense. It's something. There was talks of Shedeur meeting with Mark Davis, in the offseason, and they brought in Geno, but who's to say Geno can't be a bridge quarterback for Shedeur? It makes sense, and if Shedeur is willing to sit there and learn, and it would actually be a really good fit, I think, in 2 years when he'd be ready to, take over the team. I really do, actually.
Well, and I mean, again, I think other teams have tried to copy this formula, but if they're smart, I think to your point, in 2 years, have them sit behind, a quarterback like Geno Smith, who is very comparable to Alex Smith, in that sort of skill set that they have. And so have him play behind a smart veteran quarterback who doesn't make a ton of mistakes, and learn, the fundamentals, give him time to build, and then, kind of pull him a Mahomes, that might be their move. So I think that's where I got him going.
It's a good take. I like it. All right, well, then that's kind of like my next pick. Is my same thought process was Shedeur falling to the Jets. That's where my thought process was, they brought in Justin Fields in the offseason. They gave him a decent contract, but it wasn't anything that solidifies that he's the starter going forward. It was kind of like, let's just bring him in and see what he can do. And I think that if Shedeur falls in the laps of the Jets, I think big market, big name, they would jump right on that if they could. And that's why I see, if he doesn't go to the Jets, I think Shedeur falls another 10 picks. I think we see a similar Brady Quinn first round, from the mid 2010s of Brady Quinn falling almost, I can't remember if it was out of the first round or it was towards the end of the first round. I could see that happening for Shador just because of some of the reports with it's not his attitude, but like they don't like that he's comes off very confident in who he is and his game. And just there's some teams that just don't need a quarterback or want to take a risk on a guy that they don't know. They don't know how he's going to be. They seen him play at a decent school, not not an SEC Alabama LSU type, and he had some success, but not crazy success over a couple of years. So if he doesn't go to the Jets, I'm telling you, he's down towards the back of the first round, and it would be similar to the Brady Quinn thing. I feel it in my gut. I think that's what's going to happen.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like right around here with J&T still on the board, I feel like a team, might do something crazy to trade up to get him. And the team that I see doing that is somebody like the Cowboys,
100%.
especially on the fact that, they notoriously missed out on Derrick Henry last offseason. Jerry Jones has been taking, a lot of heat for that. Then again, he's pretty stuck in his ways, so maybe he doesn't care. But, to sort of fulfill that gap that they missed last year, the Cowboys move up 6 spots or 5 spots and go after, potentially a generational running back, that they haven't had since Zeke was in his prime. You still got Dak for a while because you signed him for a long time. You still got, CD. So I don't know. I see kind of something crazy like that happen. If there's no trades, I kind of think the Jets go Michael Williams and they get a defensive player, best edge available at this point, and they just go defense and, just try to buff that up.
Yeah, that's a good take. I think a lot of people want to see Genty go to the Cowboys. I think that's probably like the fan favorite, and I would love that too. Honestly, it would be like really great for TV and football. Okay, so Carolina's interesting. They weren't a great team last year. Kind of came on at the end a little bit. Bryce Young started playing a lot better. I think they've got some confidence in him because I think, if I remember correctly, they benched him during the season last year. And then when he came back, he kind of took back that team over. And I think they actually get him some help at wide receiver. I think they end up going the guy from Arizona, McMillan. He's a tall 6'4", big receiver, big target. I think if you really want to help your offense, really want to help your young quarterback, you got to bring in weapons for him. And so I think that they take the wide receiver, McMillan from Arizona.
I don't hate that, and I agree that they're going to do something to help out Bryce Young, whether it be him. I could see them, although it's a little high to go after the tight end, but they might go Tyler Warren and just get like a really solid tight end. And he looks like a beast. I wish the Chiefs could get him as somehow their next, grooming after Kelsey. But so I could see them because especially we've seen in the league lately, how important having like a safety valve, really good tight end is. You saw last year with Brock Bowers. So it's like you get these athletic tight ends that could make a difference. Especially somebody for Bryce Young, just having that safety valve and an additional blocker at the same time. So you get that hybrid, because if they don't go wide receiver, tight end is kind of like that Venn diagram in the middle where you get both. I also think that they go and get that, Armand Membu offensive tackle just to beef up their offensive line and help out Bryce Young against like the defense's, pass rush and give him more time is basically what I'm saying. So definitely they help out Bryce Young, whether it be a weapon, an offensive lineman, or you go tight end and get a little bit of both.
Not a bad take. I like that. And you brought up Membu, or however you say his name, the guy, your guy from Mizzou. Let me I want to pronounce it right. Armand Membu. I think he goes to New Orleans. I think that they're just in kind of a fire flight kind of, need everywhere. Not sure what they're doing going forward. Is Derek Carr the future at quarterback? You can't really go wrong when there's a guy with talent like that at offensive tackle sitting on the board. So I think they kind of just go safe pick, take offensive tackle, and worry about their other positions when there's maybe some more solidified guys still on the board.
Yeah, I think I could see that if he's still on the board, and like those last two picks haven't gotten him. I also see them going Will Johnson and getting a cornerback, like a really standout corner to sort of replace Marshawn Lattimore and, bring back that sort of, I don't know if you want to call it like iconic corner, like so like anchor solid corner for that defense. And thinking about just adding Justin Reed, Tyrann Mathieu, be kind of a nasty, defensive backfield to have, or secondary, to have a real, solid first round kind of corner, 2 veteran safeties. I mean, you're looking at least on the defensive side, you're looking pretty solid.
All right. And finally, Chicago. This is where I think Genty falls. This is where I think if he falls past the Raiders, and I don't know if he goes in the top 10 other than to Chicago, unless the Raiders take him. But I think this is like the match made in heaven pairing, I think, where you get a guy, Caleb Williams last year, your quarterback of the future, and then you give him a weapon, Ashton Genty, with some of those receivers there, DJ Moore and Cole Kmet there at tight end. That's a solid offense. You've put together a playoff offense, I think. And we know they made moves, Joe Thuney and different offensive lineman pickups in the offseason. So I think if you solidify that running back room, you've got a built offense that I think can compete with a lot of teams in the playoffs, especially in the NFC, where besides the Eagles, it's kind of up in the air is, who could, make the playoffs and make a deep run. And so Genty, I think, is a perfect fit, a guy that you can hand the ball off to, throw it to, and be a safety blanket. He's basically a 3-down back that you're going to want out there. And he's the workhorse of, I think, the Chicago Bears' future.
Yeah, I think if he hasn't gone already, that's a good spot for him. If not, I can see them going like, maybe McMillan at wide receiver if he's still there. Maybe, if Warren doesn't go to the Panthers or earlier, he might, I could see them going to Chicago, kind of, Penn State and Chicago, kind of like, I don't know, there seems to be some kind of like a similar vibe to that sort of like, it's not like a flashy, coastal city. You get that Midwestern sort of, even though Penn State's sort of like on the Eastern coast a little bit, but it's kind of like blue collar, I think. And, I could see Chicago getting a really solid, they have a history of having really solid tight ends. So if he's available there, I think they get him. So I agree with you, either Genty or like a tight end, maybe a wide receiver for Chicago.
All right. And that is the Bad Takes NFL Mock Draft provided by Arrowhead Pulse Podcast.
The world's most okayest takes.
The world's most, we're going to look it up and add some opinion to it. But okay, so before we go, let's just talk about kind of what's coming up. We know the draft's next week. We'll definitely have a podcast after that that's just kind of going over mostly. We'll probably touch base on some of these picks, the top 10 picks, and then if there's kind of any others that stand out to us, and then we'll definitely look into who the Chiefs pick up in the draft next week. And then, going forward to just being optimistic about the Chiefs run, trying to get another Super Bowl and, make it 6 out of 8 or five, it'd be 6 out of 8 seasons making it to the Super Bowl. So the Chiefs are, we're optimistic that they can do it, and we want to follow, every week, just kind of touching base on that. So, Nick, what are you looking forward to? What are you looking ahead to as we start getting back into the podcast and, talking football?
I mean, look, as long as we have Patrick Mahomes, again, I think he's the best quarterback in the league. I'm still a fan of his. I believe that he's going to have a new type of swagger, cutting the mullet off and kind of going with the fade. He's going to give the other teams, their fade or whatever whatever that saying is. He's going to run them their fade. I don't know. And then, always in Veach we trust also. I think he's going to draft well, as he always does. He's got a knack for finding talent, not only the best available, but like late rounds where that gets a little more harder and you really see the true difference of a good GM. He's proven that, So I think we're okay. We're in a decent position. I hope that the Chiefs have a hunger and a sort of kind of going on a revenge tour would be great. And we'll just see what happens, having Rashee Rice this season will be totally different. We'll see, if the NFL deals out some kind of suspension or something, but just having him, that's something that we didn't have last year. That's going to make a difference. So, I'm optimistic. I'm not giving up all hope yet. I've been through, we have been through some rough seasons as Chiefs fan where, you kind of just there was no hope. It's just, is what it is, hoping to even make the playoffs as a wild card or something. And we're not in that position, I don't think, yet, as long as we have Mahomes and Andy Reid and Brett Veach, Kelsey, Chris Jones, that core group of guys can take us, and we can make a deep run. So,
yeah, I think the thing I'm looking forward the most is the Patrick Mahomes revenge tour. I think he, got a lot of hate throughout the season. I think the way that it ended, he's a very competitive guy, and he doesn't go out like that. And so, you brought up getting the fade, got the haircut. It's time to change it up. You saw the same thing kind of with Xavier Worthy after his situation in the offseason. Cut the dreads. It's time to lock in. It's time to focus. It's time to go on that revenge tour, and it's time to make a stand on who the Chiefs really are. When you get kicked down, you show them that we getting back up. So that's what I'm excited for the most.
Absolutely.
All right. Anything else, dude? Or you ready to end it, or you want to say something to the peeps?
Oh man, just happy to be back. Hopefully, talking more football, and like I said, we're gonna put out something on the socials. See if you guys want to hear us have some more like generally lukewarm takes on things, and
more lukewarm than they already are.
Yeah. I think Rory McIlroy is pretty good at golf, this LeBron guy seems to have something going for him. I don't know. So, we'll see what the feedback is, if people care about hearing our words. But if not, we're going to keep spitting. We're going to keep, talking about the Chiefs Kingdom. We bleed red. Everybody bleeds red, but we bleed more red than you do. And that's it.
All right, peeps. We're out. Again, social medias have changed. I'll put them in the link in the description on the YouTube video. And we'll get some clips posted of the podcast as well. But everything's going to be at Arrowhead Pulse Podcast or at Arrowhead Pulse. And yeah, thanks for joining. Thanks for listening if you made it this far. And we'll see y'all in a week. Peace.